It's officially safe to say currently that the Milwaukee Bucks are bad. Really bad. While losses to the Boston Celtics and crazy good Cleveland Cavaliers are acceptable, at this point in the season as they're missing a key piece in Chris Middleton, losing to the Chicago Bulls, Brooklyn Nets, and getting absolutely thrashed by the Memphis Grizzlies isn't. And what is concerning is Giannis Antetokounmpo's numbers are good, mirroring what he's done the last couple of seasons. And even Dame's numbers aren't bad. Taurean Prince has given them some decent minutes, and while Bobby Portis and Brook Lopez are a tad below last year's numbers, they aren't far off. One of the unfortunate truths is their defense since trading away Drew Holiday has been slightly worse, but not as far as people think, as realistically, the Bucks weren't an elite defensive team even with Drew. Meanwhile, Giannis in 6 games has not been able to average 1 block. Not one measly block as a player that has always been touted as a defensive force. They're an older team with Dame, Portis, and Lopez all entering the twilight of their careers, if not already there. We can blame the free fall on coaching, we can blame it on chemistry, we can blame it on effort, but the reality is, sometimes you have to know when to say when. This Bucks team, in some people's opinion and even mine, may have overachieved. They caught fire at the right time as the Celtics hadn't put everything together. The Sixers were still reeling from the Kawhi shot. Kevin Durant's foot was too big, and CP3 did what he does best in the playoffs and got hurt at the most inopportune time. We've seen a carousel of coaches, and yet they haven't seen a conference finals since their 2021 championship run. It seems like the rest of the Eastern Conference elite have gotten slightly better, and Milwaukee already tried to make a huge splash but have failed. And trying to appease Giannis, it seems the Bucks have imploded. And if this season continues on this path, you can expect Giannis to be looking at greener pastures elsewhere. So if, or maybe when that happens, where's the best fit for the Greek Freak, and would it be a realistic place for the former 2-time MVP? I'll go through the least realistic to the most.
But first, if you enjoy NBA breakdowns and analysis, please subscribe to the channel. We are working for that 2,000 sub mark and can't do it without you guys. Also, check out the GOATcast podcast, streaming live every week with guests and some wild takes. Thank you, and now let's get into this.
Now, I know there's some hardcore Laker or hardcore LeBron fans out there salivating for this. Either LeBron will have to retire, which I guess could happen, or the Lakers would have to sour on Anthony Davis, which would be crazy the way he's been playing this season. They do have some draft capital for future drafts, so that could be enticing to the Bucks, but they would likely not want to take on hefty contracts. So that limits who the Bucks would take to maybe D'Lo and a few others. I'm not exactly sure who's coming up in the draft in the next 2 to 3 years, but it would really have to be an attracting draft class for them to go for this. Giannis side by side with an aging Anthony Davis could be interesting and be a monster of a Twin Towers. The spacing will be a little tough as obviously neither are sharpshooters from 3, with AD being a little more trustworthy from that distance. It could still get clunky at times. Giannis at the center position could thrive as teams would have to be super strategic in how they defended the Lakers with both Giannis and AD on the court. While I give this a least likely of the scenarios I've come up with, I wouldn't be surprised if a disgruntled Giannis' name is brought up in talks with the Lakers front office. There's only one way that this would be more realistic than the Lakers, and it all hinges on the Suns' season. If the Suns underachieve this season, and while they're playing solid so far, I have a feeling that the Kevin Durant experiment will be seen as a bust, and due to Bradley Beal's no trade clause, it could be extremely difficult for them to move him. So the only appealing trade piece for Milwaukee would be KD and his expiring contract. A mix of KD and Jusuf Nurkic's expiring contract means the Bucks could go for a mini rebuild, as KD might keep them formidable out east, but once his contract and Nurkic's is up, they'd have some money to work with, and while dealing other high-priced Bucks, they could get back some draft capital with also money to spend in free agency the next season. While Milwaukee isn't a desired home for top stars, a big paycheck being dangled in front of you could be a game changer. With Giannis in Phoenix, he would likely be surrounded by shooters, which would give him ample space to work his magic. We'd also have a younger and more solid number 2 option or sidekick in Devin Booker, who can more than take up the offensive duties for Giannis to get back to his defensive mind. It would be a gamble, especially out west where there's a lot of young talent that is coming along, but it's a gamble that could give Phoenix a better chance to position themselves into the top tier in the West. Hear me out. The Dallas Mavericks can smell another championship. They might even get back to the mountaintop this year as constructed. But if not, they have the perfect scenario to land Giannis. They have a solid player coach who has history with Giannis and Jason Kidd, who could be attributed with some of Giannis' growth as a player early on, as Kidd had the Greek Freak playing point guard. Yes, point guard for the Bucks. So that's a check. The Mavs have a slew of expiring contracts that a team potentially rebuilding or trying to shed money to make a big splash in free agency would want. Kyrie Irving has a player option he could opt out of, and if he can be talked into it, could take a little less in hopes of bringing in Giannis and potentially grabbing another ring. Jason Kidd would know how to utilize Giannis effectively, and like with Phoenix, Dallas would have the shooters to give Giannis the space to work. Imagine Luka Doncic and Giannis in a pick and roll. We saw what Luka did for Daniel Gafford. Just imagine that with Giannis down there, not to mention the way the Greek Freak could mentor the upcoming Derek Lively II. It would be a win for Dallas. A potential good start for Milwaukee as they try to rebuild, not to mention Dallas has a little draft capital, so they can throw some picks for the Bucks. It just has match made in heaven written all over it. While a nightmare to the rest of the Western Conference, this could be the move to make for all parties to be happy. So these are big ifs. And the season is still young, so by trade deadline, the Bucks might be a completely different team and in a completely different space. But for right now, they look to be on the decline, and it might be time to freshen up for the future. Giannis seems like a guy that wants to be in the best opportunity to win. And after bringing Milwaukee a chip in 2021, he could be in the mindset that they've failed to put a team around him that can get them back to glory. Although he has to look in the mirror too, as he's been injured for the past 2 postseasons. I didn't pick any Eastern teams because blockbuster trades like this usually happens across conference. So I don't know any East team the Bucks would be willing to help that would be more fitting than the ones I mentioned. Unless Giannis forces his way out, there's no way the Knicks can pull this off. They do have draft capital, but trying to match salaries, either the Knicks have to give up almost every role player they have, or they have to get another team involved, which could happen, but I don't see the Knicks and Bucks ironing anything out anytime soon. But that's just me. But what do you think? If Giannis demands a trade, are these the best possibilities, or do you have more? If so, let me know in the comment section below. If you made it this far, please like and subscribe to the channel. Closing in on that 2,000 sub goal and can't do it without you guys. Thank you, and be back soon with more content.